Welcome the enlightened ones. Let's cut through the pleasantries, shall we? The hardest battles aren't fought in arenas, they're the silent wars waged within your inner circle where smiles mask hidden agendas. Let's be real, the ugliest battles you've endured weren't on battlefields, but at dinner tables. Have you been there? I have. Psychology tells us envy isn't lurking among strangers. It festers most intensely with those closest to you. Why? Because proximity amplifies comparison. When you're radiating success, those nearby start to feel the heat, and not in a good way. This is where it gets complicated. Have you ever felt someone's unease around your joy? When you become the prize, people you once called friends suddenly treat life like a warped talent show. Secret competitions ignite not to better themselves but to dethrone you. And trust me, it's never a fair game. It's backroom deals, whispered slander, and fake applause that hide simmering resentment. Sound familiar? Let's dive deeper and uncover why this happens. The real shock: you never even signed up. While you were busy building, growing, and tending to your soul's purpose, they were secretly scoring your wins, judging your progress, and plotting how to eclipse you. And when they realized they couldn't dim your essence, things turned ugly. Have you ever felt like you're being observed more than appreciated? You became the trophy they couldn't grasp, the tantalizing prize that ignited their greed, but scorched their hands when they reached for it. And here's the bitter irony. The very thing they were competing for was never available for grabs. You are not merchandise. You are a unique soul, a divine assignment. This realization can shift your perspective drastically. So brace yourself, because this isn't about petty jealousy. It's about how your brilliance sparked a hidden war among so-called friends. By the end of this, you'll understand why their competition wasn't just ugly. It was self-destructive. Oh, and let's sprinkle in some humor, because watching people trip over their own ambitions is the best dark comedy life offers. Ready to laugh and learn? Number 1. You became the mirror they couldn't bear to look into. That's the core reason everything shifted. It wasn't just your success or the opportunities you attracted, but the constant reminder of what they refused to confront within themselves. Your discipline spotlighted their laziness. Your courage exposed their fears. Your authenticity made their pretending feel unbearable. They didn't resent you for what you possessed. They resented the reflection you forced them to see. Can you think of someone who seems more irritated by your progress than inspired? People can handle a stranger's success. But when it's someone they share moments with, laugh with, or call a friend, it cuts deep. They can't escape the comparison. Every time you spoke with conviction, it clashed with their excuses. Every time you faced hardship with grace, it made their own complaining sound hollow. Instead of using your presence as inspiration, they twisted it into a silent competition. The envy grew not because you did anything to provoke it, but because you illuminated everything they had buried inside. This is why friendships often crumble when one person evolves. You didn't reject them, but your very growth rejected the comfort zones they loved hiding in. To admit they were jealous would mean admitting they squandered years avoiding the same risks you embraced. So they projected blame onto you, creating false narratives to protect their pride. You think you're better than us? became the unspoken accusation, not because you ever said it, but because you proved it without words. The harsh truth. Many people don't want the mirror of truth standing too close. It's easier to shatter the mirror than to confront the flaws it reveals. This is a pivotal realization for anyone striving for growth, and that's what they attempted to do with you. The betrayal, the whispers, the sudden competition, all an attempt to smash the reflection. But here's the thing about mirrors. Breaking them doesn't erase the image. The cracks only sharpen the truth, cutting deeper with every shard. Have you ever felt like someone's trying to break you down only for it to backfire? So they turned against you, failing to realize the war was never with you, but with themselves. You weren't their enemy. You were their reminder. And for some, nothing is more intolerable than a reminder they can't escape. Now let's dissect the real motives behind these actions. Number 2, the competition was never about winning. It was about replacing you. That's the brutal truth beneath the surface. They weren't trying to run their own race or build their own lane. Their entire mission was to figure out how to wear your skin. It wasn't envy of your possessions or achievements. It was envy of who you are. They wanted your essence, the effortless way people gravitated to you, the doors that opened because your presence carried weight. And because they couldn't duplicate that, they decided the next best option was to destroy you. That's why their moves never felt like healthy rivalry. True competition pushes everyone to improve. Have you noticed the difference between genuine support and subtle sabotage? But with them it was different. They weren't seeking self-improvement. They were aiming to erase you so they could step into the space you occupied. That's why the betrayal stung deeper. They weren't aiming to win alongside you. They were aiming to steal your spotlight, as if your position could even be traded. It's a twisted logic. Instead of recognizing that each person has their own unique calling, they became obsessed with silencing yours. They thought if they could undermine your reputation, steal your ideas, mimic your style, or spread lies about you, they could somehow inherit your influence. It's like they didn't get the memo about individuality. What they didn't realize is that destiny doesn't work like hand-me-downs. You can't steal what was tailor-made for another soul. The saddest part is that this kind of competition drains them more than it ever harms you. Obsessed with outshining you, they abandoned their own identity. They stopped nurturing their own gifts because their energy was consumed trying to outdo you. And even if they managed to copy your steps, they could never carry your spirit. It's like chasing a shadow. You can mimic the shape, but the life inside it is missing. So what looked like competition was really desperation. They weren't running against you, they were running from themselves. And in the end, they didn't replace you. They exposed themselves. Remember this when you feel someone trying to replicate your journey, because when all the schemes collapse, you remain who you've always been, while they're left exhausted, empty, and still searching for a way to fill the void that only authenticity can. Let's move on to the hidden source of their envy. Number 3. The prize was not wealth or status, it was access to your energy. That's the aspect most people overlook when examining the envy you faced. It wasn't really about the things you accomplished, the money you earned, or the recognition you received. Those were just surface-level excuses. The real magnet was your energy, the way you carry yourself, the life force that makes people feel alive just by being around you. That's what they were secretly competing for, the unspoken treasure they could never name aloud. Your energy has always been distinct. Whether you enter a room quietly or speak with authority, people feel it before they even understand it. Some are inspired, others feel threatened. And in the case of those friends turned rivals, they wanted to control it. They wanted your light for themselves because deep down, they knew their own presence couldn't command what yours does naturally. It's not that they wanted your blessings. They wanted the source of your blessings, the aura that makes blessings flow your way. This highlights the subtle dynamics of energy and influence. That's why they didn't just watch you. They tried to attach themselves to you, to drain from you, to compete with you while feeding off your spirit simultaneously. They believed that if they could get close enough, mimic your vibe, or even push you aside, they could capture the force that makes you magnetic. But energy doesn't transfer like that. You can't steal a flame and expect it to burn for you when your own soul has no fuel. And here's where the jealousy turned ugly. When they realized they couldn't possess your essence, frustration boiled over into bitterness. They didn't just envy your achievements, they envied the way people trust you without question. The way opportunities find you without force, the way your presence changes the atmosphere. These things aren't bought, they're carried. And that's what made you the dangerous prize. So their rivalry was never about tangible rewards. It was spiritual theft in disguise. They wanted to hold the weight of your spirit without paying the cost of your journey. And when they couldn't, they lashed out, not realizing that the very energy they craved was protected. Recognize this pattern, because no matter how hard they compete, your light is not a trophy. It's a calling, and only you were built to carry it. This brings us to how friendship can turn predatory. Number 4. Their jealousy turned friendship into a predatory hunt. That's the dark truth people avoid discussing. Sometimes the ones sitting closest to you at the table are the ones plotting how to take you off it. They laughed with you, celebrated with you, and clapped for you, but all the while they were sharpening knives in the quiet. Not because you betrayed them, not because you failed them, but because your very presence made their pretenses impossible to maintain. You didn't expose them by accusing them. You exposed them simply by existing in truth. Your light has always been dangerous to those who thrive in shadows. It doesn't matter how kind or humble you were. The fact that you walked with authenticity revealed their games for what they were: manipulative, hollow, and self-serving. That's why their smiles began to feel thin, why their jokes carried an edge, why their loyalty was always conditional. They weren't befriending you, they were hunting you, circling you like predators, waiting for the right moment to strike. The cruelest part is how calculated it was. Predators don't attack openly, they stalk, they study, they wait. And that's exactly what they did with you. They learned your strengths so they could twist them into weaknesses. They memorized your vulnerabilities so they could exploit them at the right time. They didn't resent you because you failed them. They resented you because you made them feel small in a world where they wanted to feel big. And yet here's the irony, their jealousy turned them into everything they pretended to despise. They thought they were being clever, but in reality their behavior revealed the exact insecurity they were trying to hide. Have you ever seen someone's actions contradict their words? Every attempt to sabotage you was really a confession. I can't stand that you shine where I shrink. This is why you can never take everyone's friendship at face value. Some people aren't clapping for you. They're marking your rhythm so they know when to strike. But no matter how sharp their knives were, they still underestimated the strength of what you carry. They thought they were hunting prey, but in truth they were wounding themselves because no weapon formed against light survives without first destroying the hand that holds it. This is a crucial lesson about self-destruction. Number 5. They're competing for an illusion of you, not the reality of you. That's why their entire scheme is doomed before it even begins. What they're chasing isn't the real you. It's a distorted version built from their envy and projections. In their minds, you've become this symbol of perfection, this untouchable figure who always has things fall into place. And because they don't see the sweat, the tears, the sacrifices, or the spiritual battles you fought, they assume your life is easy to replicate if they just copy the outer shell. But here's the truth. They can't wrap their heads around what makes you who you are, and that has nothing to do with the surface. Do you ever feel like people misunderstand your journey? It's not the way you dress, the way you speak, or the way people respond to you. It's your essence, the invisible qualities that can't be faked. They don't see the depth of your resilience, the nights you've spent rebuilding yourself after setbacks, or the inner strength forged in silence. They think they're competing with the person in front of them, but they're really competing with their own inability to do the inner work you've already done. The irony is that this chase only destroys them. Instead of cultivating their own gifts, they waste their energy trying to tear down or duplicate yours. They abandon their path in the hope of hijacking yours, not realizing that the illusion thereafter was never sustainable to begin with. You can mimic the look of success, but you can't fake the spirit that holds it together. So they end up drained, bitter, and lost, not because you blocked them, but because they were chasing a ghost of their own making. And this is where the envy becomes tragic. If they had taken all that effort and poured it into their own growth, they might have found their own power, but obsession blinded them. They weren't chasing your reality. They were chasing the version of you their insecurities created. That version doesn't exist, and yet it's the only thing fueling their competition, which means no matter how hard they run, the finish line will never appear, because the reality of you can't be stolen, copied, or replaced. It can only be lived, and only by you. Let's talk about the roots of betrayal. Number 6. Betrayal always starts where admiration failed. Initially, they admired you, and some even tried to model themselves after you. They watched how you moved, how you handled pressure, how you carried yourself with a quiet strength that couldn't be shaken. For a while, that admiration seemed genuine. They cheered for you, praised you, and even told others how proud they were to know you. But underneath it all was a truth they didn't want to face. Admiration only lasts as long as they believe they can one day measure up. The moment they realized you were unattainable, that you carried something they could never duplicate. That admiration soured into resentment. That shift is where betrayal is born. Instead of saying, "I can't be like you, but I can learn from you," their pride twisted the narrative into, "If I can't be you, I'll destroy you." Envy grows quickest in the soil of admiration gone wrong. They couldn't stand the gap between who they were and who you had become, and rather than confront their own shortcomings, they turned you into the enemy. Ever witness a dramatic shift in someone's attitude? Betrayal became their weapon, not because you deserved it, but because their ego couldn't handle the truth of your difference. What makes betrayal so sharp is that it comes from the people who once clapped the loudest. They weren't strangers on the outside. They were insiders who had seen your struggles, your flaws, your humanity. They knew what it cost you to stand where you stand. Yet they convinced themselves that pulling you down would ease their own sense of inferiority. But betrayal doesn't erase their feelings of inadequacy. It magnifies them, because even after trying to stab you in the back, they still can't take away the very thing that triggered their envy in the first place, your essence. So their betrayal was never about you doing something wrong. It was about them failing to handle the weight of their own admiration. They started out in awe, but when awe demanded humility, they chose hostility. In truth, betrayal is the shadow of failed admiration. It's the evidence that they once respected you but couldn't stand living in the reality that you were out of their reach. This is a critical understanding of human nature, and instead of letting that inspire growth, they chose the cheaper path of treachery. Now let's explore how you disrupted the group dynamics. Number 7. The friend group became a battlefield because you upset the hierarchy. Everything seemed fine as long as everyone stayed in their assigned role. The joker, the follower, the one who never challenged the leader, the one who played small so no one else felt insecure. They thrived off that unspoken system, a quiet agreement to keep the balance of power intact. But the moment you stepped into your power, that fragile order shattered. You didn't play by their unwritten rules anymore, and that exposed how artificial the entire structure really was. They weren't prepared for you to grow because your growth forced everyone to confront their place in the group. Ever felt a sudden shift in group dynamics after personal growth? As long as you stayed modest and quiet, they felt safe. But when you started walking in confidence, speaking with clarity, and refusing to shrink, suddenly the old pecking order couldn't hold. Those who were used to being admired felt threatened. Those who survived off manipulation lost their grip, and those who wore loyalty like a mask couldn't keep pretending. What looked like unity was really dependency, and once you disrupted that, the group turned into a battlefield. The backhanded comments, the subtle shade, the gossip behind closed doors. It wasn't random. It was strategy. They were trying to pull you back down into the role that kept their system alive. Because if you stayed small, they didn't have to face themselves, but your power exposed the lies they were living. It revealed who was truly supportive and who was only comfortable when you were beneath them. Fake loyalty can't survive when truth walks in. The moment you stopped dimming your light, every hidden agenda surfaced. That's why some suddenly became distant, others became hostile, and a few tried to turn the group against you. They weren't fighting for justice or fairness. They were fighting to preserve a hierarchy that collapsed the second you stopped playing along. What they didn't realize is that upsetting the hierarchy was inevitable. Groups built on insecurity instead of authenticity always fall apart when real power enters the room. And though they turned the friendship into a battlefield, the war they waged only revealed who they really were all along. Your eyes didn't break the group. It simply exposed that it was never solid to begin with. Now let's discuss how your grace was misinterpreted. Number 8. They confused your grace with weakness until it backfired. You chose forgiveness when others would have chosen revenge. You offered help when they barely deserved your presence. You supported them even when their loyalty was shaky at best. But instead of honoring your heart, they misread it as ignorance. They assumed your patience meant you didn't see what they were doing, that your kindness meant you lacked discernment, that your silence meant you were powerless. They mistook mercy for blindness. What they failed to realize is that grace isn't weakness, it's restraint. It takes far more strength to hold your peace than to lash out, more power to forgive than to retaliate, more courage to keep your hands clean while others throw dirt. Have you ever had your kindness mistaken for weakness? You weren't naive, you were deliberate. You knew their games, but you also knew that fighting on their level would only cheapen you. And so you waited, not passively but wisely. That waiting became their undoing. While they plotted, slandered, and schemed, you stayed steady. They thought their whispers were working, their tricks were landing. Their betrayal was cutting you down, but your patience was never silence. It was evidence that you trusted timing. Judgment doesn't always come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it comes in the slow, steady collapse of the very traps they set for you. The same grace they mocked ended up being the stage for their downfall, because every time you forgave, you gave them another chance to reveal themselves, and reveal themselves they did. Each attempt to exploit your kindness only showed the depth of their own corruption. Each time they tested your limits, they only stacked more weight on their own judgment day. So when the tables turned, it wasn't sudden. It was the inevitable result of their miscalculation. They thought you were weak, but in reality you were protected. They thought you were blind, but in reality you saw everything, and by the time they realized it, it was too late. Your grace had bought them time. But it didn't erase the consequences. They confused your patience for naivety, and in doing so, they built the very downfall they now have to live with. Let's explore how attacks became beneficial. Number 9. Every attack against you became free marketing for your greatness. What they thought would ruin you only ended up amplifying your presence. Each scheme, each whisper, each attempt to smear your name became a billboard advertising your importance. If you were truly insignificant, there'd be no need for so much energy to be spent tearing you down. Their obsession with discrediting you was the clearest sign that you were the one holding weight. The irony is almost laughable. They made you the main character by trying so hard to erase you. Think about it. The more they gossiped, the more people became curious about you. The more they exaggerated your flaws, the more others noticed your strengths. Ever notice that attempts to bring you down highlight your importance? The louder they tried to point out your supposed failures, the more obvious it became that you were the one worth discussing in the first place. Attacks have a strange way of backfiring like that. They don't erase credibility, they draw attention to it. And in your case, their attempts to bring you down only prove that you were the gravitational pull that kept the group orbiting in the first place. People eventually saw the pattern. If everything went wrong somehow, it was always your fault, and if things went well somehow, you were still the problem. That contradiction exposed their insecurity more than anything else. It revealed that the real issue wasn't what you did, but who you were. And once people realized that their attacks lost power, instead of making you look weak, they made you look essential. What they failed to understand is that greatness doesn't need to defend itself. It reveals itself under pressure. Your ability to stay grounded while being targeted highlighted exactly why you were different. While they wasted time plotting, you kept moving. While they tried to discredit you, you kept growing. And that contrast only widened the gap between you and them. In the end, their schemes became your promotion. They put your name in rooms you hadn't even walked into yet. They gave you visibility by making you the subject of every whispered conversation. And while they thought they were exposing you, they were really exposing themselves. The truth is, their attacks weren't proof of your weakness. They were the loudest proof of your worth. Now let's discuss the ultimate reason for their failure. Number 10. The game was rigged from the start because they were playing against God's choice. That's the part they never grasped. They thought this was just about talent, popularity, money, or influence. They assumed it was a level playing field where strategy, manipulation, or numbers could tip the scales in their favor. But what they didn't realize is that when someone is chosen, the rules change. The outcome is already written. It's not about chance, and it's certainly not about human effort. It's about divine design. That's why their competition was always doomed to fail. They came with plans, alliances, and even sabotage, but none of it could override the fact that your path was secured long before they entered the picture. Competing against you was never really competing against you. It was competing against the one who set you apart. And when you fight against a divine appointment, you aren't just wasting your strength. You're setting yourself up for collapse. It's like trying to dam a river with bare hands or bringing sand to a flood. Their effort was impressive in terms of energy, but completely useless in terms of outcome. No matter how much they schemed, you still rose. No matter how many setbacks they tried to cause, you still advanced. What they saw as resilience was really evidence that the favor on your life couldn't be tampered with. The irony is that the more they tried to compete, the more obvious their futility became. Because every time they pushed against you, the gap between your destiny and their envy grew wider. It didn't matter how many people they rallied or how many lies they spread. The script wasn't written in their favor, and deep down they began to feel it. That's why frustration turned to desperation, and desperation turned to outright hostility. The truth is, this was never a fair contest. You weren't playing the same game they were. They were scrambling for attention, validation, and status while you were walking in alignment with something greater. They thought they could win by force, but you were never relying on force. You were carried by grace, and grace doesn't compete, it conquers. Now let's look at the ultimate consequence. Number 11. The prize they fought for became their punishment. In their desperation to possess what you carry, they didn't realize they were digging their own graves. They wanted your essence, your energy, the influence that follows you like a shadow. But in trying to grab it, they destroyed everything around them. They burned bridges with people who once stood beside them. They broke alliances that could have protected them. They exposed their motives so clearly that even those who once trusted them began to see through the mask. What they thought was strategy was really self-sabotage in slow motion. Instead of gaining what they wanted, they ended up empty-handed, because you cannot snatch a soul's calling. You cannot hijack someone's spirit. They wanted the glow without the grind, the crown without the cross, the results without the sacrifice. And when reality reminded them that life doesn't work that way, their obsession consumed them. They thought they were competing for you, but in truth they were competing against their own peace of mind. The punishment wasn't lightning striking from the sky. It was something more brutal, watching themselves unravel under the weight of their own envy. Ever seen someone's ambition lead to self-destruction? They lost credibility with others because their jealousy became too obvious. They lost trust because their betrayal couldn't stay hidden forever. They lost their own sense of direction because they poured all their energy into chasing you instead of cultivating themselves. And the cruelest punishment of all, after all their efforts, they still couldn't touch what they were fighting for. This is the danger of desperation. In trying to possess something that isn't theirs, people end up destroying what little they had. They think they're reaching for treasure, but their hands come back with ashes, and that's exactly what happened here. They didn't win you. They lost themselves. Every trick, every scheme, every attempt to control or replace you circled back as judgment, not from you, but from the very path they chose. So the story ends with irony. The prize they chased was never theirs to claim, and the punishment they now carry is not because of you, but because of the choices they made in envy. You remain intact, but they remain in pieces, haunted by the realization that their own hands built the cage they're trapped in. This is a story worth reflecting on. Number 12. You never signed up for the contest. They invented it. That's the ugliest truth at the heart of all this drama. While they were secretly ranking themselves against you, comparing every move you made and plotting how to get ahead of you, you weren't even playing their game. You weren't looking sideways, you were looking forward. You weren't trying to outshine anyone. You were focused on building, growing, and staying aligned with your purpose. That's why you're untouchable, because you were never in the competition to begin with. Can you see the difference between running your own race versus chasing others? The tragedy of envy is that it's built on illusions. They assumed you were running the same race they were. They thought you were chasing the same recognition, the same validation, the same approval. But you've been moving on a completely different wavelength. While they were desperate for attention, you were investing in growth. While they were gossiping, you were creating. While they were competing for position, you were mastering your lane. That's why their attacks never really stuck. They were throwing stones at a battle you weren't even fighting. And here's what makes it even worse for them. In their obsession to beat you, they revealed their own insecurity. They created a contest in their minds, but because you refused to play, they ended up competing against their own shadows. No matter what they did, you didn't respond the way they wanted. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was proof that their entire strategy was irrelevant. Nothing frustrates a rival more than realizing the person they're competing with doesn't even see them as competition. This is why you remain untouchable. They thought they could pull you down by creating rivalries, but you can't be pulled into a game you never agreed to play. They thought they could measure themselves against you, but how do you measure against someone whose goals are rooted in a higher calling? The finish line they're running toward doesn't even exist in your reality. In the end, they lost before they started, not because you crushed them, but because they wasted all their energy chasing a phantom race while you quietly kept building. And that's the difference. They invented a contest to prove something while you kept creating something that can't be undone. Now let's explore how your presence revealed their true nature. Number 13. Their friendship was a mask and you snatched it off without trying. That's what unsettled them the most. They put on smiles, acted supportive, and played the role of loyal friends, but deep down it was a performance. They wanted to be seen as trustworthy while secretly resenting you. They wanted the benefits of being close to you without ever truly celebrating who you are. And the thing about masks is they always slip when the truth walks in. Your presence alone made it impossible for them to keep pretending. You didn't expose them with accusations or confrontations. You didn't need to. The way you carried yourself in honesty and growth naturally revealed the contrast. Their fake encouragement couldn't stand next to your real progress. Have you ever felt like someone's friendship seemed more like a performance? Their shallow intentions couldn't hold up against your genuine spirit. So without even trying, you dismantled their facade. It wasn't that you tore the mask away, it was that their own pretense couldn't survive under the weight of your truth. And this is why they turned on you. Because when someone's identity is built on performance, exposure feels like a threat. They didn't hate you because you harmed them. They hated you because you made it harder for them to maintain the lie. Around you, they couldn't keep up the act. The mask grew heavy, the cracks began to show, and eventually the truth spilled out for everyone to see. That's when jealousy turned into distance, or worse, into open betrayal. What they never understood is that real friendship doesn't need masks. Real loyalty doesn't collapse in the face of someone else's growth. But because theirs was only a costume, it was bound to unravel, and it unraveled faster because of you. Your presence demanded authenticity. And where authenticity is missing, exposure is inevitable. So in the end, the mask fell not because you forced it, but because lies have no stamina in the presence of light. They wanted to play the role of a friend, but you showed them and everyone else that the role was never real. And once the mask came off, there was no going back. The performance ended, and so did the illusion of friendship. Let's discuss the true measure of victory. Number 14. The real trophy was surviving their treachery with your soul intact. They plotted, they whispered, they turned friendship into rivalry and loyalty into betrayal. But through all of it, you didn't let them corrupt your spirit. They may have scarred your trust, but they didn't poison your heart. That is a kind of victory they'll never understand, because their entire game was built on trying to break you into something less than yourself. Instead, you walked away whole, and that wholeness is more valuable than any crown they imagined winning. What does it mean to survive treachery with your soul intact? What makes this survival so powerful is that it's not just about enduring the betrayal. It's about what you refuse to become in the process. You didn't let bitterness rot you from the inside. You didn't turn into them just to even the score. You didn't sacrifice your values just to prove you could play dirty too. That restraint, that refusal to lose your essence is where your true strength lies. Because it's easy to fight evil by becoming evil yourself. It's much harder to walk through the fire and come out without smelling of smoke. And here's the irony. While they were scrambling for some illusion of a prize, tearing at each other in desperation, you became the actual trophy. Not in the sense of being owned or won, but in being the living proof that integrity outlasts treachery. Your survival shines as evidence that their schemes failed. The more they tried to drag you into their mess, the more obvious it became that you were untouchable. They burned their bridges, exposed their envy, and lost themselves in the chase while you gained the one thing they never could: peace of mind. They wanted your downfall to be their entertainment. Instead, your endurance became their shame. They wanted to see you broken, yet the only brokenness revealed was their own. They wanted to prove you were just like them, but your intact spirit showed you were never in their league. That is why at the end of it all, your survival isn't just survival. It's the crown they'll never wear. So yes, the real trophy wasn't applause, status, or recognition. The real trophy was walking through betrayal and still having yourself. That's the kind of prize no one can steal. No one can fake, and no one can ever take from you. At the end of the day, Enlightened One, this was never about a competition you agreed to play in. It was about a stage they built out of envy and insecurity, hoping you'd stumble so they could feel taller. But you didn't stumble. You didn't bend. You didn't let their secret wars redefine who you are. That is the deepest truth in all of this. Their schemes exposed them, not you. Their jealousy burned them, not you. Their betrayal stained them, not you. What started as a hidden rivalry among so-called friends became the stage where your light only grew stronger. While they tore each other apart, chasing illusions, you kept your soul intact. While they confused your grace for weakness, it became the very strength that judged them in the end. And while they fought for a prize they could never possess, the only real trophy turned out to be your survival. Untouched, unbroken, and unbought. This is why you remain the dangerous prize. Not because you are to be owned, not because you are to be won, but because you are proof that what is chosen by divine design cannot be stolen, mimicked, or dethroned. You turn their battlefield into their burial ground, not by fighting with their weapons, but by refusing to descend to their level. So let them gossip, let them compete in shadows. Let them gnash their teeth at the sight of your rise, because no matter how ugly their secret games became, the ending was already written. You remain standing crowned by survival while they remain haunted by the war they created. And that enlightened one is the final checkmate. Now let's make this message resonate further. Did this message resonate with you? If this message spoke to your soul, let's keep the momentum going. Don't just let it end here. The world needs your light, and this is how we spread it. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the wisdom waiting for you. Tap like if this gave you that aha moment, and drop a comment to share which part resonated most deeply with you. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it. Trust me, the right words at the right time can change everything. Your support keeps this community thriving, and together we are only getting stronger. Shine on, and remember, you are not alone on this journey.